Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Catholic Truth Podcast. Today we have a crazy show, and the things that we're going to tell you in this show, you've never heard before, probably never heard before. In the culture, the activists, they don't want you to hear it. Did you know that homosexuals have up to 500 partners in a lifetime? 500. And many have up to 1,000 or 2,000. We're not talking about one or two. We're talking about the majority engage in large amounts of sexual activity, including, but not limited to, orgies in their houses, gay bars full of orgies. I mean, this is an entire part of the culture that most people don't know. And we're bringing it up not to put them down, but to save them. They're literally looking for love, but killing themselves in the process. And in fact, this comes from their own statistics. This comes from their own magazines. And I've done the research for years. I studied their own works, their own studies, their own calling themselves out. The high, extremely high suicide rates, drug rates, promiscuity rates, infidelity rates. I mean, it's almost impossible to find some people who are completely faithful. They have open relationships with each other. The underage sex is rampant. I mean, if I went on and on, doctors' offices, most people have like Time Magazine or highlights. They have pornography on the tables of the doctor's offices. I mean, we could go on and on and on. This is an entire culture of people that are literally killing themselves in the pursuit of love. And there is a better way. And if you don't believe me, we have somebody who used to live this lifestyle, and he's joining us today, but you won't be seeing him because he says for his own, I guess he's not ready to go live yet, but he is here, and his name is Simon, and he's going to be sharing his story today about a lot of this and probably even more. But the most important thing he'll be sharing toward the end is how God saved him, how you don't have to live death, how you can find life in new life. And in fact, God has completely and totally saved him, regenerated him, given him new life, made him born again, and he's free. He's happy, he's fulfilled, and he has never been so happy in his entire life. In fact, he's never been so fulfilled in his entire life. And probably the last place he ever thought he would find happiness and fulfillment is with God and in the Catholic Church. But he has, and I'm so pumped to be sharing his story. Simon, thank you for joining us today. I want to welcome you to the show.
Thank you so much.
Welcome. Oh my gosh. So, I mean, I dropped a lot of bombs here, and there's so much. People probably wouldn't even believe this. I wouldn't even believe this if I didn't read it all in their own magazines, on their own websites. You know, they're always calling each other, and saying, why do we have such high drug uses? Why do people say, like, oh, people abuse people with a homosexual orientation. And that's the proper way to say it, not homosexuals, people who have a homosexual orientation. But, they're abused, and yeah, they are abused. But what they won't tell you is that the biggest abuse rate against them is each other. The highest abuse rates, even, in relationships, beating each other and other things, come from each other. And so, I mean, I don't know where you want to start with all this, but I just, at least at the beginning, wanted people to know what's going on out there. And so when they say, oh, gay marriage, no, marriage is supposed to be a stable environment. And this is a volatile environment. Maybe you could kind of start with your story toward the beginning and kind of walk us through it and, kind of maybe bring to light some of these things in your own life.
All right. So when I was younger, I always had a passion for God. I remember being a young kid and being really into reading the Bible. I had a natural connection to church. I loved to go on Sundays. I always had this call to beautiful, holy things. I loved anything to do with scripture. I liked. When I was 14 years old, I read the Bible cover to cover of my own volition. I found like a daily kind of reading Bible. And at one point, I would say when I was maybe 9 or 10, I was around my house and I went downstairs and I felt something calling me to go to the basement of my house. And I turned on the TV and I watched the Rosary on EWTN. And I wasn't raised Catholic at all, but here I am, 9, 10 years old, being almost drawn into the Rosary by osmosis, basically, by watching this special on the TV. So there was this intense attraction to the holy, the beautiful, and the good growing up. And I had a great family. Um, the issues that I was having in my life is that I felt like I didn't connect always with other guys very well. My temperament was different. My temperament was always a bit different. I always had struggles connecting with other guys. And then, I fell in love for the first time when I was 14 with another girl. And that was on, that went on for a couple of years. But as I began to mature into, I guess you would say my college years, there was a lot of pressure put on me to leave the Christianity stuff and go embrace a new identity for myself. People had picked up certain mannerisms about me. They had picked up certain kind of ways I acted around others, and people really, in groups, peer pressured me to adopt and start living my life as a quote quote gay man. And I began to become convinced that maybe my fascination with the spiritual was a problem, that I wasn't living my truth, that I was making myself miserable, and that going out into what you call the scene would be my ticket to happiness. And this decision was not supported by my family, but it was supported by friend groups. And in college, it got worse and worse and worse. And as I began to explore what everyone was telling me was my ticket to happiness, I found myself more and more shocked, honestly, by the life that I was being encouraged to live, and which caused a tremendous bout of depression in my life, and ultimately reconversion back to my faith and to the fullness of Catholic truth. So, pretty cool.
So you didn't really want to go down that path, but you felt kind of forced to.
Oh yeah. So I remember being like a Bible kid in high school. I would tell people about scriptures. I would go to church. I was really interested in theology. I thought about maybe doing something with this passion ministry, but because people kept saying, oh, listen to your voice, listen to your mannerisms, and I was experiencing some level of both opposite sex and same sex attraction. I do have. I had experiences of both kind of growing up in my teens, and I'm trying to figure all this out. But there's this push, this input, this impetus to embrace the gay scene. A lot of my friends turned out to be involved in it as I developed my cohort in high school. And so I began to think like maybe, I need to break free of the shackles of these strict moral codes that I'm living by, and I need to find myself and live my truth. And maybe I'll go find a boyfriend. And of course, when I'm younger, the only things that I wanted, the only things that I wanted were the same things as everyone else, which is actually very true for most people with same-sex attraction. It starts off, you want the same things as everyone else. You want a nice, maybe a partner or a boyfriend, like a same-sex marriage, quote, quote. You want the same things that others have. You just want to be able to integrate this part of you that is so confusing and sometimes even very scary into the rest of your life. The problem is that when I began to move into areas of what you would call quote unquote gay culture, I was tremendously shocked and incredibly disappointed with the life that everyone had told me would bring me so much happiness.
And what age did you start living all that?
Well, I began around 18, 19, 20, around that time period to really start to like try to go to gay bars, or to go to gay friendly churches, or to go to like the political kind of meetups where they would try to fight for social causes. I tried to see my entire experience as an LGBT man, I guess, um, through various different perspectives, because I was very disappointed that I had to leave my faith behind. I never was able to buy into the idea that this was compatible with Scripture. I was very knowledgeable of Scripture, and the idea that this all could work together didn't really seem to resonate with me very well. But I said, you know what? I still want the same things as everyone else. I'll try to make the best of it. And then I started going into various spaces that I was told would be the spaces where I'd find my freedom, where I'd find my people. I'd find people I relate to. I wouldn't need, my old mores of life anymore. And I found some very shocking things when I began to go into gay culture. Very heartbreaking realities that I never thought I was going to experience until I did.
And that's really scary because you knew it was wrong. You didn't really wanna go down that dark road, but you ended up going down a very dark road. Can you talk about how you went deeper into it and kind of where you went from there?
Well, the thing is, it didn't start out like me seeking self destruction. I was actually like
Exactly.
a loving, caring person. People still cared about me. People in my church still cared about me. But what I expected would be like nice relationship, family values, just a life that looks a little different, but not too much like, I just want the same things as everyone else. But I remember I started making friendships with other like gay men my age, as they would call them. And I was shocked. I was typically, now I can't make this statement about college years I was a troubled soul. But outside college years, especially my young adult years, I was the type of person who got along very well with lots of people. If I was in a room, didn't matter if you were conservative, liberal, Christian, atheist, I tended to make lots of friends and be well liked. I don't like to say that to be like prideful or anything, but I make friends easily. I'm extroverted. I like to talk about things that I'm passionate about. But when I started making friends with other gay men, I found like we just didn't like each other very much. It was one group of people that was always told like these are your pals, this is your cohort, and they were very cruel. It started out with bullying. They would make fun of the way I talk, the way I act, the way I dress, the way I look. I never talked right. I never looked right. I was always ugly. They would make fun of the just everything about me. It was constant bullying. And it was ironic to me at the time. Now, whenever I went into a gay space and received this kind of negative backlash and this kind of attitude, these were the same groups that were telling everyone, like, we're trying to get into the schools to tell people to stop bullying other students who are gay,
I was
and
just thinking that.
yeah, right. So it was so ironic to me, and I'm like, I, for the most part, never got that type of backlash that much for being gay, except from other gay people, and it really started to affect my self esteem. I found that my self image was dropping the more and more I spent time with other people in this kind of scene, and my counselor at the time was recommending, you're just not finding your space. There's more to the gay scene. I was always told this than, just a secular hedonistic culture. There's more to it. And you just have to find your space. And so I tried a lot of different areas and I met some people who were kind, I guess, but no one I kept meeting the same types of people, people who are angry, people who made fun of me, and the people who did accept me didn't have a lot of moral perspectives that I agreed with.
Was it
Um,
just you, or did they make fun of each other and bully each other too?
I don't know. That's what I don't know. I don't know how to respond to that. Well, I did see that amongst gay men. Yes, I did. Gay men, yes,
That's what
definitely.
I'm talking
Uh,
about, yeah.
yeah, yes, I did. I did see they would make fun of each other, tease each other, call each other names. berate each other, and they would use each other for hookups and stuff, and then like toss each other to the side. Um, I encountered a lot of gay men in the culture who were very racist. I met a lot who were very anti-woman. The things that I've heard gay men say about women would blow your mind. Things that just you just don't say those types of things about the opposite sex. Like a hatred for women that I experienced in the way they spoke and talked and acted.
Which is
Um,
ironic because they claim that everyone hates them and is bullying them, and here they are doing it to everyone else. It's
oh,
just
to the point I was suicidal. To the point I couldn't even go to these things and feel like I began to feel like something was wrong with me. And I began to say, I really think that I'd rather kind of be the Christian boy that I used to be um, back before this whole thing started. And that was always a um, idea in the back of my head that I wanted to go back and try to make things right. And so during times I would go to like a Bible study and then I wouldn't feel like I fit in there. So I'd go back into like the gay world, I guess you could say. But I started to see some more things that started to really disappoint me. And I started to really dislike, that's kind of sad, but I really started to dislike being a gay man after a time. I really started to really dislike it. Um, I found when I was kind of in the dating scene that there wasn't just like a mild promiscuity. I'm not going to put into words, and I want to be careful when I say this. Not all gay people, I would say, do this, but the gay scene, the popular culture, pushes this narrative of just complete free love. And I would meet couples and people out in the scene, and they were voraciously promiscuous, voraciously so. And I was like, I don't want to live like that. I don't want that to be my life. And people would always be like, what's wrong with you? Like, don't you want to be free? Don't you want to be like, you know, sex positive, all that? Um, when I looked at the people who were living in that frantic kind of promiscuity, um, they were not happy. They were not happy as a man should truly be happy. Maybe happy in terms of like pleasure and living like a party lifestyle, but I don't want a party lifestyle. I didn't want to live as a hedonistic person. I didn't want to go out there and make my life going into my 20s and later 20s when my friends are getting married to make my life a giant party. I don't want to live like that. That most men don't want to live like that. But there's this idea out there in the scene where it's like, well, this is great. We get to party, we get to have fun, we get to live life on our own terms. I never saw myself that way. I always thought that I was just trying to have the same things as everyone else and pretty much have like a calm life. I never wanted a party life. I never wanted the pride celebrations and such. And in the gay male subculture, there is a strong emphasis on apps, online apps, and some of these, I'm sure you guys know the names of them. Even some straight people know them. They are the only word I say is voraciously promiscuous. These apps are very self-destructive. The apps that are being used in the scene right now promote degradation. They promote open relationships. They promote very self-destructive behavior. I know people who will just go out. They'll go to parks, public places, and then go on these apps, and they make them their life. And this is not to make anyone feel more guilt or shame. It's, whenever you have anyone living a life that brings them down, whether it's like a girl who's looking for her father and she's always picking up a new guy, or a dude who's all about cars and having a new girl in his bed every week, when as a Catholic, when you approach people like this, you don't want to bring them more shame and more guilt than they're already at. You want to lift them up. You want to bring them into a place where they know God's love and their own dignity. And I feel like that's what I'm trying to communicate here. When I was frustrated, I wasn't wanting to engage in anything like that. But there was so much pressure that this is just how you lived if you were a gay man. You went on these apps. You lived the you didn't live a heteronormative life. Um, I will get to that.
Yeah, and before you get to that, let me
Yeah,
just say I used to read the magazines way back in the day,
yeah,
their websites back in the day, and all their articles, like all of them practically, were all about like how to have an open relationship, how to have multiple partners at the same time, how to talk to your current partner about having multiple partners, like how to have an orgy, like, how can we stay alive past 35 years old? Or why, once we get to 40, nobody wants you anymore. Like one of the saddest things that I used to read in the gay magazines were that, or their websites, were that you're basically unlovable when you get older, because if you can't put out, nobody wants you, and you basically die alone. Like to me, that broke my heart. Like this whole subculture of darkness and evil is not only eye-opening, it's shocking.
it's heartbreakingly tragic and very very lonely. Um, it is a frantic search for love that is constantly futile because there's no sense of a go and a stop, right? In the normative like heterosexual world, there's like there's barriers, there's boundaries, there's sometimes a man and his wife have to negotiate how they're going to explore intimacy together, and she's going to have different needs than he is. But in this in the gay scene, that doesn't happen, and so you can see just voracious promiscuity, short-term relationships, a constant search for pleasure, um, and it's not healthy. And we talked today, and I'm going to say this, and I don't want to hurt anyone's feelings, but about the depression that goes on in many men, that is occurring in and is well documented in a lot of people in the LGBT scene. And yes, unjust discrimination against people with same-sex attraction is a thing. And the picture of life can look very gloomy if you're dealing with this and trying to be a Christian. Yes, I get all that. Um, and those aspects can increase depression. They most assuredly can. But the scene itself is the biggest conductor of depression in gay men that I've ever seen. This constant search for a new partner, a new relationship, to ditch what you have, to be open. Most men at the end of the day don't want those things. And that's all the scene really is about. I would love to have said that I have, when I went out there and I met people, that I really connected with others. But I kept finding people indulging in behaviors I found very dangerous and risky. I kept meeting people who were mean to me. I kept meeting people who lived self-destructively, and it was around this time that I decided I wanted to re-explore turning back to my faith and going back home to Jesus. Yeah.
And I know that studies have been done, people who wanted to find homosexual couples in a monogamous long-term relationship, and they had to practically travel the country to find any, because they couldn't find any. I mean, you could count them on one hand. They're like so rare for it to happen. I'm not saying it can't and it doesn't, but it's so rare.
I don't think I've ever met. I think I've met one. I've met hundreds of people at this point in my life who are, in that kind of. I think I've met maybe one that was not in a extraordinarily open relationship. So
Yeah, that's crazy. And it's really sad because, again, we're not doing this to say, oh, we don't like you, you're bad. No,
yeah,
you're looking for love like everybody else. You're doing it wrong. And I know people in my own life who live that lifestyle and are killing themselves in the process, and it's like they don't know how to get out of it. And there's such an evil spirit keeping you there. Even if you want to break out, it's very hard to break free. I mean, that could be said of heterosexuals who are
oh,
engaging in
absolutely, yeah.
sex outside of marriage. I mean, pornography, once you give into these deep, dark sins, the gets a hold on you. Now imagine, that times 100.
Yeah, I want to
That's
talk about pornography real quick. I believe that is a huge factor in how our society got to where it's at. And I think any sort of exposure to it can psychologically and psychosexually disorient somebody, and that's why I think pornography is a really uh, big trend in a lot of gay life, if you could say. It's pornography addiction is sweeping, and I tell people all the time, if you're struggling with any sort of sexual addiction or sexual brokenness, give yourself time to heal from the effects of pornography. Give yourself a year and see how you feel and see where you are after a year. And I'm telling you that when the practice of holiness in the wake of being exposed to such a thing can actually lead to a lot of healing and transformation. And I just recommend that to anyone who's struggling. That if you feel like there's certain issues in your life concerning sexuality or romance or emotional issues, and this is a piece of your life, ask yourself what your life would look like if pornography was taken out of the picture. And, while things might not look too great now, if you're kind of stuck in a lot of these issues, the more you get sober from such a thing, the more you'll begin to flourish. So I just wanted to put that out there. Anyway, continue.
Yeah, I want to challenge all men who are married to go find like 10 super hot women. Just go find 10 super hot women and I guess just start making out with them. Like just, your marriage will be fine. Just go make out with them all because that's what it's like with pornography. When we bring all of these other women into our marriage, into our relationships, it's almost impossible to get rid of them. It's very hard to break that. And I guess, Simon, I'm wondering, they were they wanted you to go deeper into the gay bars and this super dark lifestyle, and you didn't really want that. Did you end up
Mm,
going down that anyway?
No, I eventually backed out because I said, why would I do this at this point? Now, some years have gone by, and one of the biggest wake ups to me, one of the big wake ups was I went into the Gay Christian Network, which, by the way, has two kind
It's an
of
oxymoron.
well, here's the thing. Let me just explain. There's two ways they go about it. One is actually kind of traditional chastity. It's okay to have the attraction, you're just not supposed to follow through with it. And the
Okay.
other is like, it's okay to have the attraction, but try to have a monogamous relationship. Those were the two attitudes. And the two groups are kind of encouraged to like be friends with each other, even though they disagreed. One would look more of like chastity, one would look more of like a monogamous relationship. Well, what they called side A was the A where it was like the monogamy kind of crowd. It got shut down by its own adherents because a lot of people complained that it was homophobic to suggest that anyone needed a monogamous relationship if they were gay. How would God approve of a gay relationship if it was monogamous? Gay people, by nature, don't follow that standard. So, in order for God to approve of gay relationships, he would not be able to approve of just monogamous relationships. Do you see the level of like, they, and when I was like, wow, even the Christian network can't even see fidelity as a common moral good. And my gosh, this is how deep it runs. And it was after that and seeing all those comments, like, how dare you suggest to me that I need to be monogamous in my relationship? If God approves of me as pursuing a same-sex partnership, then he would have to accept how we do things, in this culture. I saw that. I heard that from a vast number of participants. And that was the big red flag that I needed to just come home.
We're
And now
making
my
God in
story,
our own image.
yeah, making God in our own image. And now this is when my story starts to transfer from like being dissatisfied with gay life to something new and the positive and the beautiful and the good. And this is my favorite. This is where things start to get better.
Yeah, tell me about it.
Okay, so because I was always in the scripture and I was always into following God's will as when I was in my teens, and you know, a lot of the time I would go to Sunday church and just sit in the back and watch everyone praise and worship and just kind of be isolated and alone by myself. And when Christians found out I was doing this, they were very like concerned about it because they're like, "Why is Eric's really struggling with himself and such?" And so I began to look into different churches that would support me and like support me growing spiritually, not just supporting whatever I did or did not want to do. Because honestly, I had reached a point, I'm gonna tell you, where I had told myself, if I became an atheist, I would probably not even bother with the gay scene anymore. I would just basically live alone, do art projects, make my big groups of friends, live with some buddies, and like have just like a kind of just like fun little life. I was that done with it. And when I was starting to look into churches, I began to explore all the theology and faith again, and my my love for that came back in my life. And so I was first, I wanted to become Orthodox because I said, okay, they've got traditional sacraments, they've got iconography, they've got the history of the church behind them. But when I went to kind of the Orthodox realm, I felt they were a little bit too nationalistic, and I felt like there were many national schisms between the Orthodox churches. So I turned my eyes towards Rome. And because I had always known the rosary, because I had always known that prayer almost supernaturally in my life, I began to say the rosary regularly. I got a great book out called Left to Tell. It was by Immaculate Ilibagiza. She was a survivor of the Rwandan genocide. She wrote about how the rosary like helped her during that difficult time. And I eventually ended up going to RCIA. I became a Catholic, and I started really getting involved in the Mass. I started to sing. I started becoming a cantor. I started digging my roots in and really making wonderful relationships in the church. I was very honest about like my personal attractions to others in the church, and for the most part, when they found out that I was trying to strive for a holy life, no one gave me any problems. They actually thought it was kind of funny. They're like, "Oh, Eric, he's a little bit, but we love him here, and he's living a holy life." And I was included in their families, and they were really, really good to me. I found the Catholic Church overall. I don't have this experience of this mean, cruel church like beating me over the head and things like that. I actually found a lot of healing and a lot of tremendously good relationships as I started to really immerse myself in my Catholic faith. For seriously though, not when I was on the fence trying to live two different ways or wasn't sure, wasn't making a commitment. When I really said I wanted to live out Catholic values as they are, that's when things started to really open up.
And that's why I wanted to do this show, because people would never just believe, we hear the culture like, oh, we must treat, people with same-sex attraction the same, we got to love them. We have to treat them with equal dignity, which of course is true. But the fact is they're the ones bullying, hurting, killing, destroying
They're
each
promoting
other.
a culture that is telling people that this hyper promiscuity and this identity politic and this kind of insular, cliquey way of life that involves partying and drugs and doing whatever you want for the rest of your life is some sort of morally liberating life. And it gets very, very old, very quick. And a part of the reason why so many gay men are depressed is because the culture itself is killing them. And I have no problem saying that.
Yeah, absolutely. And and what do? How do they fix their problem? They do it more and more and more because they're still trying to
Yes.
find that happiness. And I'm still not happy yet. So maybe I just haven't tried this or I haven't tried that. And they keep going deeper and deeper.
Yes, correct. And then when you start with sin, I heard a priest once tell me that sin is like marshmallows. You have a big bag of marshmallows, and it looks good from the outside. You might have one. One marshmallow is good. Two marshmallows are sugary. They're good. But by the third one, they don't. Marshmallows don't taste once you're at the third. But once you're hooked on them, you're eating one after another, and you're getting sick. And I feel like that's kind of the truth, the truth with all of this. You start going down that route, and eventually it starts to make you sick.
Yeah. And I've known that with people in my own life too.
Yeah.
And I've always personally, whenever I've seen people who have same-sex attraction, not always, but like a large majority of the time, they just look miserable. And they have this whole theater persona where we're acting happy and we're acting like we have it all together. We're just ha 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 ha. And
Yeah.
it's all a big lie. It's all a big fake, thing. I mean, they really want to be happy. Maybe they're trying to convince themselves, but I have a gift of just maybe like Padre Pio, seeing through people. I can see
Yeah.
the real thing, and it just breaks my heart that they're just so dead inside.
Yeah. And I don't want to say that for every single
Right,
one,
and I'm not
but
either.
And but like there's like there are people who are attracted to the same sex and all that, and then there's the scene, the culture. Gay culture is poisonous. It absolutely is in every way. And people who have these attractions are better than what this culture has to offer them. And
Amen.
I'm very big on that.
And I've
I
read,
have found my life in the church really changed, and my personal life saw a lot of transformation when I began to pursue chaste friendships. Um, all right, so ask away. So now things are I'm starting to get more serious about my conversion, and I'm starting to look at the faith from a new angle. Just to put it out there for Catholics, I'm going to tell you the demonic lie that Satan tells people with same sex attraction. And I want you to think about, and now this is to test people who might be exhibiting some unjust discrimination towards people who have these issues. You come to church, you feel like you can never get married or have a family, never have sex, you can never have romance. You feel like you can't join a religious order or the priesthood, and all that's off limits to you. And what the devil it seems to be that way at first, because you think that because of this one issue, you really don't have any place in the church, really any place in family life, any real structured vocation, except to just basically do stuff and figure it out by yourself. With the only consolation sometimes being offer it up. Now, I want to tell you that that's not the actual reality of what your life will look like if you choose to follow Christ as someone who might be carrying this cross or exhibiting these issues. The devil will try to make you think that way, but it can appear that way at first. And a lot of people who have no idea of what it's like to exhibit these attractions would have to admit that if they were in that situation, the situation of same sex attraction or having this problem, then it might feel that way to them too. Okay. So, what the church needs to operate as, what I found that I needed to do on my own, is find family and community in the church and start making friendships, relationships, and looking into the possible ways I could serve and be part of my faith community to love and be loved. What I began to notice is that throughout my whole time, even in the scene itself, my passion has always been for theology. It has always been the search for truth, the search for God, the search for peace. I was just looking down all the roads that people had kind of pressured me to search, the roads I didn't need to go down. I should have stayed on the compass uh, of my faith, grounded in a traditional ethic of chastity and charity the whole time. But, I got redirected there, and I rediscovered my love for sacred music and sacred art and stained glass windows and the rosary and the choki and iconography. And, I kind of started to do this like ADHD, joyful Catholic boy where I was just rediscovering all the things I was passionate about. Back in that scene, I remember hearing the hot topic issues and the social justice kind of milieu that I found out there. Um, Passion for reproductive justice, or passion for left wing causes, or anti bullying campaigns. But what was always interesting to me was the pro life movement and saving the unborn. To me, that's a cause worthy of coming together for. Um, the pursuit of a healthy America that is prosperous and following its constitutional freedoms. Those are the things that interested me in terms of political justice causes. And now I could explore fighting for the common good, fighting for the good of my neighbor, without the shackles of having that weight on me. I was able to pursue the type of person I always am, a guy who loves his country, who loves Jesus, who defends the sanctity of life, who believes in the church, who likes sacred theology. That's the person that I always am and always had been, which explained a lot of the depression when a life of hedonism was offered to me as though it was the solution to my happiness. The solution to my happiness was me not being gaslit and knowing who I was the whole time. So, as I began to explore the church, I looked at the different ways in which I could serve. And one of those became making really good, what they call chaste friendships with men, chaste friendships with women, and chaste friendships with families, Catholic families. And God gave me tons of them, tons of them. He gave me a lot of friendship. They say one of the miracles of Jesus was being a man with 12 friends in his 30s. Well, I mean, I'm in my 30s making tons and tons of relationships in the church. So it was something that God really blessed me with.
I was too, actually, before I got married. And people always said, "Oh, if I didn't get married, I was completely happy because I had a lot of good friends. I was fulfilled in Christ." And
Hmm.
you don't need the world. You just need Christ.
Yes, and everything else will follow suit. There's this scripture: "Seek ye first the kingdom of God, and then everything else falls through." And I'm telling you, the promise is true. If you're afraid of being alone, if you're afraid of feeling like you don't have purpose, seek God's will first, and then everything else slowly, providentially, just starts to bing, 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 starts to kind of fall into place. So.
Amen to that. And so would you say that you feel happy today, fulfilled, free? What's your relationship with Christ like?
Oh, that's it's great. It's great. My biggest struggle is a full letting go of the past and leaving it where it is. There are times where I feel like, um, I wish I had followed my instincts sooner. I wish I had, gone this way sooner or made these relationships earlier, and I could have missed so many years of unhappiness. But that can't happen. So it's just kind of an acceptance of let's move on and see what the future has to offer. Um, this is where the second kind of cross in my life comes into place. The one that's actually bigger than anything I've said so far. Um, when I got diagnosed with CRPS, that's when things really started to. I started not just looking at like the reality of the church and the world, but looking forward to kind of what the next life was going to be like, and my excitement for heaven. So,
And that's one of the big tragedies is the rampant, like just rates of all kinds of things, including diseases and high death rates and low life expectancy rates and stuff that people don't talk about that people need to know.
oh yeah, well that this is kind of a separate issue. The contraction of CRPS kind of came about due to a lot of multifactorial issues. But yes, you are correct when it comes to that scene. I've seen a lot of people talk about um, STDs, and I did lose a friend of mine to AIDS, and the idea that that culture is always trying to figure out what's wrong and how can we help people and how can we help people who are maybe gay culture needs to start being well. I don't think it can reform itself, but it advocates unhealthy behaviors. I mean, you go to a gay pride event, there's people drinking and getting drunk all over the place, and the party never stops. And as you get older, the party has to start to stop. But in my scene, gosh, I've been using that word too much. In my experience, what happened to me is I got a freak condition called complex regional pain syndrome. Now, this is where I have a second part of my testimony. There's part of my testimony that deals with the sanctity of sexuality. The next is we're going to get into the next bridge of my life where I had to look into, do I really believe in the sanctity of life? I contracted, by all accounts, I'm not trying to sound grandiose, but the world's what is graded the most painful and incurable medical condition that exists in the world. Um,
Mm.
if you research it, it's considered the most painful condition that we don't have a direct cure for. For about 2 to 3 years, I was in crippling, screaming, white light levels of pain. It started out once a month, and then it became every day.
Oh man.
And um, the nickname for the condition is suicide disease because so many people take their lives from CRPS that there is that kind of phenomenon. But here's the thing: there's hope with proper treatment. Oftentimes, if you can get diagnosed and get proper treatment, conditions and symptoms can ameliorate. And I begin to say, if I have fought for my faith this hard, I can't let anything bring me down. I cannot. It doesn't matter how bad this gets. I have to live for God because I finally have made it to a point in my life where I'm pursuing the faith, as I always should have. But I had to go to multiple surgeons. Excuse me, multiple surgeries. I was put on multiple medications, heavy cocktails of prescriptions. I was constantly going to the doctor 3, 4 times a week, and a heavy depression sank over in my life. And I said to myself, no matter how bad things get, never miss Sunday Mass ever, or any day of obligation. Things could get real bad. It doesn't matter if you have to Uber. You take your medicines and you Uber. Always, always attend to the sacraments and try to go to confession once a week as well. Uh, there was an opportunity, I believe, that arose for me in which someone kind of had offered me a medical way out, if you know what I mean. Okay. And I don't want to go into details about it, but there was a legal way I could have received a treatment that could have made this nightmare end, if you know what I'm saying. Um, and it was a real wrestling point for me. But I had to look at myself and say, who do I trust more? The God who saved my life or the reality of my current pain? And what I did is I began to tell the church about what was going on with me physically. And they started to raise money for me. Catholic families opened their homes up and let me stay with them. I had people just would come over my house and stock my shelves with groceries. People would drive me to my medical appointments from church, and they made it like, okay, we took care of Eric this week. Now you take care of that Eric the next week. It was just the most Christian form of love that I've ever really witnessed
So
in my
people
life.
never judged you, they just loved you.
They loved me unconditionally, unconditionally. And so by this time, I'm now living like I'm not living in the scene anymore. You know, I'm living according to my faith. They never judged me. They treated me with utmost charity. And I believe it was their interventions that both now spiritually, but literally, physically saved my life. Um, and I would go on my phone and check my text message screen and the chat. I have like 20 texts a day from different Catholics telling me, I'm praying for you. I'm praying for you. Do you want to join in on a Zoom call? Just around the clock all day. And just every single
It's
day, people
amazing.
praying for me coming over was really remarkable. So,
It's beautiful. And
yo,
so you're carrying your cross.
I am. And I've got to say, as I've continued to do so, um, I don't want to go into too much detail, but I've gotten the opportunity for something that might actually spare me. The pain is becoming more manageable. The condition is on the wane. It's in tremendous remission. That's what I'll say. And there are some treatments coming up that might get the pain down 95%.
Praise God.
Um, so it's amazing that God has worked through in that way. Um, there's this one family I was staying with. Uh, she opened her home to me. She adopted me as one of her spiritual like sons. And I was at mass, and I heard this like 2 months ago. I heard in the depths of my soul that I would be healed in 6 months. And I came home and I was praying about this. I said, I feel like you're telling me I'm going to be healed in 6 months, but I would like a confirmation. And after I said the prayer for a confirmation, I went into the other room. And within 10 seconds, she's like, the woman I was staying with, who had opened her home to me, um, was talking to me about a testimony she heard of a man who got a crippling pain condition and was healed within 6 months, right after I just prayed. So it's like weird little things like that keep happening. New surgeries, new medical interventions are being introduced in my life that are going to be tremendously effective. I know they're going to be great. And already I can see tremendous improvement. I'm walking, working, full-time job. I have tons of relationships. I sing at church. Most people in my condition would be at home all day. They'd be bedbound or homebound, and I am not at all. So
Wow.
it's a living miracle. So God has been very, very good to me. And one thing that I just kind of want to get back to is the power of friendship and relationship. And I do not support in any way conversion therapy at all. I don't believe in that, or like praying the gay away or anything like that. When I began to make really good friendships with other guys, I found that I really started to experience a level of like freedom, if you will, from the just kind of frantic mindset that I used to have in the past regarding kind of the concept of my sexuality. And when I started making chaste friendships with the opposite sex, I began to feel attraction and interest in them as well. And so, kind of these chaste friendships with the same, the opposite sex, I don't want to say like I flipped the switch or whatever, but there's been a tremendous, tremendous healing that has taken place through these friendships, which is undeniable for me. As you know, when I was young, I said when I was younger, I always liked girls when I was like a teen, before I got like kind of roped into all of this. And so I'm more discovering the promises of theosis are true. The more I pursue holiness, the more I'm not looking at stuff I'm not supposed to look at, the more I'm pursuing healthy relationships, the more I'm not abusing my body, the more I'm out there putting myself to service. The more I'm in prayer, the less I'm in depression. The more I'm pursuing my medical treatments, and the less I'm feeling self-pity. The more I move in the direction of healthy and holy relationships, and the less on codependent ones. The more I pursue God's plan for my life, the more healing and restoration I get. And so I don't put any limits on what God's plans for my future are, because I believe that the practice of holiness and the pursuit of virtue in and of itself provides a level of transformation and renewal of the mind that is very undervalued in this entire conversation. So that's just something I put out
Amen. And this is a good lesson for everyone else. You said you were forced to go down that road,
there.
just because you had some
Pressured.
mannerisms. Yeah,
Yeah.
pressured. Yeah, like like some people say, I have some, homosexual tendencies, or not tendencies, that's not the right word, mannerisms sometimes. And so they're like, oh, you're gay or whatever. I hear people say that in the comment section sometimes. And, just because it seems like I might have some mannerisms, may or may not, doesn't mean that I am or that I do. And, this is a good lesson for everybody, because, you know, I'm not, and I don't. So
Oh,
just
wow.
because even if I do have mannerisms, it doesn't mean I have same-sex attraction. And in the same way, it's just because someone has a really deep voice as a woman doesn't mean that she's really a man. Just because she acts like a man and is a tomboy doesn't mean she should go like girls. Just because people are different and out of the ordinary doesn't mean we should stereotype them, judge them, falsely put them in a box that they don't belong in. And really, I'm talking to the people out there who might believe these lies. You are who God made you to be. And
Yes,
even if you do struggle with same-sex attraction, God can, you might struggle with that the rest of your life, but that doesn't mean you can't have happiness, freedom, good
exactly. Yeah,
relationships, healthy relationships, loving relationships, and a relationship with God.
correct. And that's something that's really, really important that people know about.
Mhm. Most important thing, because
The
everything else
most
is
important
death.
thing is that agape love that is freely available to all if we seek it.
Do you have any final thoughts that you might want to share with anybody or say?
Sure.
I mean, there's
I
so
hope if
much we
you've
could talk
listened,
about.
to my testimony that it hasn't been all doom and gloom. I know that I mentioned at first kind of going off in directions, searching for love in all the wrong places. But the key for me in both my physical health trials and the other issues was my belief in theosis. The more and more we pursue holiness, the more and more God restores us to the original person we've always been. Instead of us becoming holy by exchanging who we are with some soul on, soul in heaven, like we're doing like some sort of transaction. I really believe that God, through the process of sanctification, shows us who He truly made us to be to begin with. And the more and more you conform with that, you discover that through holiness, the more God's options and opportunities for your life will begin to abound, as they say, and the more healing and restoration one can receive. And that can look at in a whole bunch of different ways. And I really support, the way at first might seem a little short-sighted, lack of options. Whenever you carry a cross and you're trying to trust God with it, it can look, the onset can look limited, narrow, scary at first. But if you give the process of sanctification some time, you will be so surprised by what God is able to introduce into your life and what He's able to show you about yourself that you might have never realized before. And that's all I have to say.
And don't buy the lies of the devil that you won't break out of this. You can't break out of this. This is who you are, and all of that other lies.
And that scene is necessary part of your life. There are some people, and I've known them, who live like chaste lives, I guess you could say, but still feel like the need to be part of that whole kind of scene. And I don't get that. I don't think there's anything really of substance out there. I think it's a very broken kind of subculture, and I would definitely encourage steering away from it. And that's what
it's a subculture of death and hell, 100%.
It's not very nice out there.
No, and it's not to say that the people are evil necessarily, but what's dragging them in is
a desire. It's a very self-destructive driven kind of.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I've seen it firsthand. I've seen, same-sex attraction women forcing straight women to become in a relationship with them. And just, who cares if you have a boyfriend? Who cares if this? They just
pushing boundaries, pushing what's comfortable for people. And, honestly, though, if you think about like my health issue, right? There's a strong tendency for me when I was going through that level of pain that I never thought existed on this freaking planet, for me to just opt out. And there are groups in this culture who would say, I had the right to do that, and that would have been good for me, but it wouldn't have. You know what I'm saying? Just because a lot of people say something might be good for you doesn't always mean that it is.
Amen. And I have spoken way too much in this video, so I want to thank people for watching. And I want to thank people for listening, and I hope you can see what they're not going to tell you. And I hope that you will see how important it is to know this truth that will set you free. I mean, we have many more videos on these topics, and we have a few more coming out very soon with another person, a good friend. And we have resources for you if you're struggling. We actually have resources that will help you through this. And if you are someone who thinks that we do amazing work here and we tell the truth here at Catholic Truth, please consider supporting this ministry. Please follow us on social media. You can see all of that down below. Thank you all for watching, and God bless.
God bless you.